Grade 12. In today's lesson, we will be looking at topic 6, which is the dynamics of markets, specifically on the perfect market. Okay, we know that we have different market structures, so it is important for us to understand what a market is. When we are talking about a market, what are we referring to? Okay, often people define a market as a place where buyers and sellers meet. Can I highlight that that is not the right definition for a market? Why am I saying so? Because at current you can buy anything anywhere online. So if you're saying it is a place, you are limiting the definition of a market. So we will not say that a market is somewhere physical. It can take form in different ways. So it is a platform that enables you to buy, that enables the seller to supply. Okay, so how can we then best describe a market? Okay, we can define a market by saying that it is a mechanism or an institution that brings together buyers and sellers. So in order for a market to exist, there must be two participants. That is someone who is willing to buy and someone who is willing to supply a particular good or a service. So in this lesson, we will be looking at a perfect competition market. However, we know that all in all, we have 4 types of market structures. Just to quickly go through them, we have the perfect competition market, monopolistic competition market, monopoly market, and lastly, oligopoly. So let us look at our first market structure, which is perfect competition market. When we are talking about a perfect competition market, we are referring to a market structure whereby there are a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers, and the products are homogeneous. What do I mean by homogeneous? When I'm talking about homogeneous, I'm talking about something that is the same. If we are saying that someone is okay, never mind. But you do understand where I'm coming from. When we're talking about homo, we are talking about same. So even the products in this market structure are the same. What does this mean to me as an economics learner? It means that if I go to Pick n Pay, I can find a Dairy Milk chocolate. If I go to ShopRite, I can still find a Dairy Milk chocolate. And then they are faced with a demand curve that is horizontal. But let's quickly look at the advantages of a perfect competition. One of the advantages of a perfect competition is that products are of high quality, and the main reason why products are of high quality is because of the competition. Remember, we are saying there are many sellers and there are many buyers. So how do you attract your customers given that you are all selling the same good? Okay, in order to attract your customers, you must make sure that whatever that you are offering is of good quality, and then output is maximized. This perfect competition market structure enables us to have variety of products. There are a lot of products that are produced. Production is maximized. And then businesses are making normal profit. We will look at profits in a later stage, but just to bring about the concept, when we are talking about normal profit, we are talking about the minimum earnings that will keep the seller from not leaving the market. Okay, so that is the minimum earnings, the profit that they are making that will prevent them from leaving. It's not that they're making good profits, not that they're making a loss. And then consumers pay the lowest possible price for the product, and then businesses produce output at the lowest possible cost. This is because of mass production. When you produce in large quantities, there is a reduction of cost. Okay, what are the characteristics of a perfect competition? How do we identify that this is a perfect competitor? Okay, the first one is that there should be many sellers in that particular industry, and then the products are homogeneous. That is the second characteristic. The third one, the demand curve is horizontal. The reason why we have a horizontal demand curve in a perfect competition is because a perfect competitor is a price taker. And then there's perfect knowledge of market information. As a customer, you currently know of any special that is being run by Woolworths, the 50% off on all baby clothes as an essential product. And then the firm has no control over market price. We will look at this in the next slide. In the short run, the business makes economic losses and economic profits, and then in the long run, that's when they make normal. Okay, let us look at an individual business and how the individual producer will determine price. Remember, we said that in a perfect competition market, we have a lot of sellers. And an example of a perfect competition is an agricultural industry, because you get the same product. If you get potatoes from this firm, you will still get the same potatoes from another firm. Hence, we said it is important. The advantage of having many sellers is that they will all strive to make sure that their products are of high quality so that people can come and buy from them. So this is an agricultural industry represented by the market curve there, and our demand is represented by the D curve, while the supply is represented by the S curve. And we know that where the demand and supply intersect, where they meet, represented by the dot there, it is our equilibrium point, which will tell us at how much should we sell goods and how many quantities should be supplied, how many quantities are demanded there. So we have a price that is established in the market, in the industry, represented by P1, and then an individual producer will have to comply and sell his or her product at the same price, given that they are price takers. Okay, we are having a horizontal line which represents that an individual producer is a price taker. So what does this mean? This means that everyone who is selling any agricultural product, can be spinach, can be cucumber, anything that you can think of, but whatever that they're selling, they must sell it at a price in relation to other sellers. Let us look at a situation. Let me give you a scenario. I'm in a complex. There are two street vendors there. I need a bag of potatoes. One is selling his bag for 20, while the other one is 20 rand, while the other one is selling the bag for 22 rand. I know at the end of the day, what am I going to have? Potatoes, a bag of potatoes, same quantity. So what do I do as a consumer? I will definitely go to the one who is selling at a price that is 20 rand. Okay, so we are saying if an individual producer decides to sell at a price anywhere that is not on the horizontal line that was determined in the market, he or she decides to sell at any other price besides this price, besides the P1 day, this person will result in a loss in either customers or loss in terms of money. For example, if this one is selling at 22 rand, which means it's a higher price, represented by P2. At P2, this consumer will lose customers because everyone will bounce back to this supplier who is selling at P1. And then what if someone decides to sell at a lower price now? Okay, if you sell at a lower price, sell at 16 rand for instance, while everyone in the market is selling at 18 rand, you decide to lose 2 rand. So what is going to happen? After selling your product, you would have made a loss of a certain amount that you could have made if you complied and sold your goods at the given market price. So from this, we can say that the demand curve of a perfect competitor, an individual producer, is perfectly elastic. What do we mean by perfectly elastic? We are saying any price change will result in a larger change in the quantity demanded. Okay. What I've been saying in theoretical manner, prices in the market are determined by market forces, that is demand and supply. An individual producer is a price taker. Can we please not forget this one? Is a price taker. This means that he or she will sell products at a price that is determined in the market and therefore have a demand curve represented by a horizontal line. Please. The producer is therefore forced to sell at price 1. If the producer sells at a higher price, yes, higher price, than P1, consumers will not buy. You know, you won't go and buy there. And then because they can get the same product at a lower price from other producers. Also, the producer will not be prepared to sell the product at a lower price than P1. So in a perfect competition, you just have to comply and sell at a price that is determined by market forces. Then the supply curve of an individual firm. Okay, what is a supply curve? When we are talking about a supply curve, we are referring to a curve that shows the quantity that a producer is willing to produce at different price levels. So the producer is saying, at this price, I'm willing to supply this much of goods. And if price changes, the quantity supplied will also change. So we are okay, here we are going to look at the effect on price if a producer decides to either increase or decrease supply. We know that their price is determined in the market. It is horizontal. It is constant. It is at a fixed price that they have to sell their goods at. So what will happen if one producer decides to increase their supply? What will happen to a producer who decides to decrease their supply? Let us look at our curve there. Initially we were having our original supply curve represented by S, and at this supply curve, the quantity that was supplied was what? Q0, right? It was Q0 there. Sorry, Q0. After a producer decides, okay, let me increase or decrease and see what will happen. If the supplier shifts their supply curve to S1, they now start supplying here at this rate. Supplying at this new supply curve, what will happen to the quantity here? The quantity will move from Q to a higher quantity, which is represented by Q1. But what is going to happen to the price? Still selling at P1. The price is still P1. Okay, and then what if the supplier decides to shift his or her level of quantity supplied in the market to S2, to a new supply curve represented by S2? What is going to happen there? What is going to happen? At S2, we have a new equilibrium point, meaning that we have price and quantity. However, given the horizontal price level, we know that it is constant. So he or she will still be selling at the same price but fewer quantities. So if quantities decrease or quantities increase, whoever the supplier is will still sell at the same price. So the effect on price if producer increases or decreases supply is that prices will still remain the same. And our price curve as a result represent what? It represents our average revenue and marginal revenue. Average revenue is when we take total revenue, we divide it by the quantity, and marginal revenue is when we add an additional market. The demand curve for the individual producer is a horizontal line because he is a price taker. If the individual producer increases its supply, the supply curve will shift to the right to S1. At S1, the equilibrium quantity has been increased from Q to Q1, but the equilibrium price has remained at P. The equilibrium price has remained at P1. Okay, if the individual producer decreases its supply, the supply will shift from S to S2. However, the equilibrium quantity will be decreased, but the price will still remain constant at P1. The individual producer is not able to influence the equilibrium or market price by manipulating supply. So if you decide to supply more, if you decide to supply less, still the same price. Okay. Activity 1. Why could an individual firm in a perfect competition not charge a price higher than the market price? Why? Okay, because I will simply go to another store as a customer. So the customers will move to other firms because other firms are offering the same product, the same service. What will the effect be if one firm in a perfect market decides to increase the price of a product? Yes, what will happen? Okay, a firm will make a loss, and then this is because all firms in the perfect market are price takers and cannot influence market price. Why is a perfect competitor unable to influence the market price? Okay, the reason is because the producer is too small in relation to the size of the market, and he is a price taker as a result.